What's up, decoders? Welcome back to the channel. This is Decoding with Cody, and today is May 22nd, 2025. And got another live stream for you guys today. And today we have once again another collaboration. Been a week of collabs, and Derek from Gematrinator 85 is back again.
What's up, Cody?
What's up, man? Glad to have you back, and hopefully this will be a good stream for everyone. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about, actually. So we're not going to waste too much time. We'll give like a minute or so, and then we'll let some people roll in. I see we got one guy in the chat here. Give us a thumbs up, guys, if you can hear us. Usually Coffee Girl's right on it, but I don't see her yet. But yeah, definitely somebody in the chat sharing stuff about Ursay. I'm reading your comments here. First name Jesus, last name Christ. Said just wanted to point out that Ursay died at 65, and the NBA Finals would start on 6/5. Nice. And yeah, Colts won Super Bowl 41. Jim Irsay 41, like Super Bowl, like Knicks, like Skull and Bones. We're going to talk about that. Thanks for the thumbs up, Coffee Girl. Appreciate it. Got Casey Jones in the chat. Much love, brother. Hope you're doing well. I know if you guys didn't check out Casey Jones' video on the Brooklyn Bridge, he did a great video overlaying over the Brooklyn Bridge and the Orion's Belt, or the Orion constellation. So make sure you guys go check out his channel, Casey Jones Astrology 2. He's got a channel, so glad to see you here. And yeah, thank you to Keep God's Law, and thank you to Freak Pimp. I don't know how to say that. Frequency is the... Anyway, Joseph is in the chat, and give a big shout out to Joseph. Go check out his video from the last. He covered a lot of things. He covered the Israeli thing. He covered the Ursay thing. But his birthday is today, so happy birthday to one of the other decoders, Joseph.
Happy birthday, Joseph. Happy Gemini season to so many of the decoders out there.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, Sean was just making some posts on Gemini season, so it's fully. Yep, Gemini season is here, and here you guys are on Gemini season listening to two Geminis. So,
of course, Gemini season marks the end of Taurus, which is the bull sign. And on my blog, I did a post on the death of Cheers actor George Wendt, because Cheers, the pub that they used for the exterior shots in Boston, was an actual pub named Bull and Finch Pub. And really? Wendt died on the last day of Taurus. So significant stuff there.
Well, I mean, probably also ties into this NBA stuff with the Bulls.
Yeah, there was actually a bullshit riddle for this past Sunday as well on my blog, but we'll get there if we can.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't want to waste too much time. I got a lot to share. Derek got a lot to share. So we're going to jump right into it. And we're going to talk about we're going to talk about what happened yesterday, but we're also going to go back. Well, me and Derek both are going to go back a few days and talk about, I think, a lot of different stories. But the focus on the first part of this decode is going to be about the big thing that happened last night in the NBA and the death of the NFL owner from the Indianapolis Colts, Jim Irsay. And this is kind of hits close to home for me because I was a Colts fan growing up. And I obviously watched Jim Irsay many times since I was young. So, most of you guys probably not even know who he is. But for me, I knew just hits a bit closer to home for me. So this decode is going to go into depth of the death of Jim Irsay and the different themes, the bridges and the choke and the squared circle. So we're going to talk about those things as we go through. So let's get into it. Thank you to L64 of you in the chat. Please hit the like if you would, if you enjoy the stuff. And here we go. So just to overview all the things that have happened in May that led up to this, we had the Pope Leo being selected as the new Pope on the 128th day of the year, May 8th. And again, bridge collapse equals 128. And the first thing that he talked about after he took office was building bridges. Okay, so this is our initial lead to be looking for bridge riddles. So, and here we go it's going to be all about bridges. And so he comes in, and again, don't forget the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed at 1:28 a.m. in bridge collapse equals 128. He became pope on the 128th day of the year. Now, this is going to be kind of a quick overview. So after the pope took office, or after he was selected, he was inaugurated on May 18th. Well, just practically hours before he was inaugurated, there was another bridge collision in New York at the Brooklyn Bridge. And the game yesterday, which was a few days later, was in New York. Okay, so the bridge collision in New York was the Mexican ship called the Cuauhtémoc, however you say that. And this is just an overview of the players that were involved in there's much more. This is just a quick overview, but this is an overview of the players that were involved in yesterday's New York basketball game. One of them is named Michael Bridges. Okay. And notice that his name equals the ship that hit the bridge in New York. Now, the other two characters we're going to talk about, let me just bring them up, their Wikipedias real fast. So you have Michael Bridges. We're going to talk about him. And again, his name equals the name of the ship that hit the bridge in New York. Then we're going to talk about Miles Bridges. So there's two Bridges, guys with the name Bridges in the NBA. Okay. And I'm going to show how clear this is all about the Popes and the Bridges. Then we're going to talk about the star player for the Knicks, Jalen Brunson, and the star player for the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton. So these are the four main players I'm going to focus on, the current NBA players. We're also going to talk about Reggie Miller, the former NBA player. So just keep those guys in mind as we go through, because those are going to be the subjects of this decode. Now, so as you can see, Michael Bridges equals the name of the ship, 110, right? Yesterday's game in New York was in Madison Square Garden, which equals 110. Now, the two star players on either side were 11 and 0. Okay, so that when you add those numbers together, you get 110. Okay, so this is clearly a lot of 110s going on. In my last video, I covered the 110s. Osama bin Laden 110, Adolf Hitler 110. I tied it to World War III and World War II. And 110 translates to 156 in base 8. I showed how the ship was from Mexico. I showed how in Mexico there's a group of people that use base octal counting. They count their knuckles instead of their fingers. So therefore they use base 8. In base 8, 110 translates to 156. And we know that 9/11 is the 156 prime. So always 9/11 riddles, especially in New York. So the other news we got, and this is what I want to introduce this next part, is the news we got yesterday of Jim Irsay's death. Now, there was another story last year where Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, was found struggling to breathe on December 8th, 2023. That was the same day that the movie Leave the World Behind came out. Now, Jim Irsay would survive this and go on to live, of course, until yesterday. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. This story supposedly happened on the day of this movie that was about the 128. Look at the date it came out, 128. Bridge collapse, 128. Okay? The Pope became Pope on the 128th day of the year. And in the movie, Joseph is showed in the Leave the World Behind movie that I think it's like 1 hour, 28 minutes in, there's a bridge destroyed or something. Joseph will have to drop that in the chat, but he discovered a lot of 128s with this movie. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Jim Irsay was struggling to breathe. This is going to be an interesting theme on this date of this movie. Now, Irsay died yesterday, possibly from a similar incident, but they said he died in peacefully. I don't know what they'll come out and eventually say, but he died at 65. And look at his last tweet. Go Pacers. Good luck to Herb. I didn't even decode who Herb is, but maybe there's a code there. Good luck to Herb, the entire Pacers organization, and our city. So the last tweet that Jim Irsay makes for Indianapolis is about the other team from his city, the Indiana Pacers, who are from the same city as his NFL team that he owns. So, and then they go on to win in miraculous fashion. Look at what happened. In the last 27 postseasons, teams were 0 and 970 when they trailed by 14 or more points in the final 250 of regulation. That is now 1 in 970 because the Pacers, on the night Jim Irsay dies, miraculously come back. And of course, Halliburton is making a choking sign, just like many months ago, Jim Irsay was kind of choking, struggling to breathe. And then on the same day, Halliburton just happens to be making this choking sign. I mean, come on.
So wait, they show us the numbers 970 and 250.
Yeah.
That's a lot like 97 and 25, which
Death.
is
Yeah.
the reverse gematria of death.
Yep. And then the 197, like of the 1970, well, that could be the year 1970. It also could be 197, which is the 45th prime. And I'm going to talk about bridge, which equals 45. So there's, yeah, but that's a good catch with the death thing. Because in gematria, guys, 97 is death and 25 is death, and 97 is the 25th prime. So, and even the 14 is about dead. I mean, type in the word dead, it equals 14 in like so many ciphers. So all those numbers are really connected to dead. But big shout out to Joseph Aquaviva. He originally connected this to Super Bowl 60. So this is an NFL owner who dies. So we got to connect this to the next Super Bowl. Well, the next Super Bowl is in San Francisco. And this is where the bridge thing is going to come right back around. Look at the bridge on the next year's logo. So, but look at this. The Colts equals 263 in gematria. The Colts owner died 263 days before Super Bowl 60. And Indianapolis is Circle City. Indianapolis is called Circle City because it's of its planned city layout, which features a central traffic circle at the heart of downtown. And notice that the word circle equals 50. And the next Super Bowl is equals 50. Super Bowl 60, if you type it out, equals 50. And San Francisco, the location, equals 50.
Yeah, I think the last Super Bowl they hosted was Super Bowl 50.
San Francisco? Yeah, I think so. I totally forgot that, but I think you're right. Super Bowl 50. Let me just look.
Yeah, Levi's Stadium, the old Elvis building.
Yeah, and just I could have talked about Elvis with this. There's actually a lot of Elvis stuff here, but I didn't put any Elvis in today, but I could have. But yeah, the last Super Bowl was Super Bowl 50 in Levi's Stadium, which is going to be the same stadium that we're going to notice they called it the golden anniversary. So we got more gold stuff. But anyway, Jim Irsay dies and this is a big shout out to Joseph Aquaviva.
Yeah, and the 263 stands out, skull and crossbones. We'll be talking about that later.
Yeah, and this is the date of the bridge collapse too. So, and you're going to see the 326 come up and the 263. So this is a huge number connected with the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. 263 was the date. And this is Joseph Aquaviva. Again, happy birthday to him. Just wanted to give him a shout out. He also pointed out that owner equals 60. Of course, Jim Irsay dies before Super Bowl 60. His team was from Indianapolis, which equals 60. And the team that he made his last tweet about was the Indiana Pacers, which equals 60. Okay, so clearly pointing to Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. And again, I mentioned that Indianapolis is Circle City. In fact, look at the big circle right in the center of the city. So we're going to talk about the circle and the square, pretty much. That's what this is leading to. And I don't know, we could take a quick detour really fast to go on to the racing stuff because Derek is the race guy. And so this is all connected to the upcoming Indianapolis 500. So Indianapolis just wins last night and they're Circle City and they're going to be driving around in circles. Well, technically it's an oval, but they're going to be driving around in circles in just a few days in Indianapolis. So I don't know, Derek, if you want to talk quickly about like the...
Sure. I can take the screen for a couple minutes quick here.
If you want to talk about the race stuff, I think that's a good...
Yeah. So Jim Irsay, the guy who passed away yesterday, inherited the Colts ownership essentially from his father, whose name is Robert Irsay. And you'll see he died back in 1997. And 1997 stands out because New York City equals 1997. And that's where the Pacers played last night, game 1 against the New York Knicks. So this is all synced up to the death of Robert Ursay as well, unsurprisingly. Well, this year in the Indianapolis 500, the man who got pole position for the race is also named Robert. And this was a very surprising pole position, as this guy is a rookie in IndyCar. He had a lot of success overseas, Formula 2, Formula 3, but joins a new team this year and actually gets pole. And this guy's in a bit of my good graces because he drives the number 83 car, and he's the first rookie to take pole in Indianapolis since the year 83. And at the press conference, they actually asked him if he thought that was cool. And he's like, some people don't believe in the number stuff, but I like it. I think it's pretty cool. So I guess you could call him a friend of the channel. But yeah, the fact that this guy picks up the pole position in Indianapolis really stood out. And I do have a couple things on Robert down here. So Tyrese Halliburton, the guy who tied the game at the buzzer last night, he's got this special gematria of 119. And obviously, this is a big number for New York. The September 11th attacks, Tisha B'Av. We'll check out the values of choked to death and choke. They both equal 119. And when Jim Irsay died, it was 119 days after the founding date of the Indianapolis Colts. And it was 119 days before Robert Schwartzman's birthday, the pole sitter for the race. Now, Robert Schwartzman was born in Tel Aviv, Israel, which means he also has a name in Hebrew and Russian. And his Hebrew gematria sums to 1109. So, again, just showing how all of these languages actually work together. There's not just one language you can do this in. In the alphabetic order, Star of David equals 119, representing Israel. And when Robert Ursay died, Jim's father, he died 1 month and 19 days before his birthday. Now, what really brings this all together, Cody, is that this year's Indianapolis 500 will be held on May 25th, which means it's the first time this race will be held on this date since the choking death of George Floyd. And the name George Floyd equals 119 in the alphabetical order. So a lot of 119 alignments to support this whole bridge collapse and New York City theme.
I wonder if that has something to do with the when you choke, maybe your lungs collapse, or I don't know. Maybe there's something with that. I don't know. I know for sure that that George Floyd thing was a race. As I mentioned to you earlier, it's a race. It's about race, right? Like,
Yep.
And now we're talking about a NASCAR race. So I mean, it's very clear. Yeah, I think there's really something here with this whole, because Trump, I know this happened earlier in the day yesterday. Trump had that African guy, black guy in the White House, was showing him a video of them discriminating against white people. And then you had, the whole thing yesterday, I think, was really big with race, both the racing cars and the color of skin race. So
right. And on that topic, I guess the last thing I'll throw in before tossing it back to you is that, they had the South African president yesterday. Now, I haven't done a lot of videos on Formula One this year, but the one I did was about the connection between Oscar Piastri, a Formula One driver, and Oscar Pistorius, the South African sprinter. And Pistorius was in a famous story where he killed his girlfriend through the bathroom door. And F1 also has their crown jewel race of the year this weekend in Monaco. And it does appear there's something going on for Piastri this weekend. But it's interesting because South Africa, obviously a country steeped in racial issues. And yeah, Trump and the president going back and forth. Definitely more to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought, with the whole, how I started this decode talking about Leave the World Behind, that was a race central movie. You had the two white, the white family and the black family kind of standing, there's that picture from the movie where the black family is standing outside and the white family is supposed to be letting them in because it's actually their house. So yeah, so much with that, and then that goes back to Obama and Trump also. So we'll see if we end up getting an Obama versus Trump next election. Maybe that's what this is kind of setting up. I don't know, but that'd
Yeah,
be
and
interesting.
I mean, just think about it, right? The Twin Towers up for 33 years or destroyed 33 years after construction. This Robert Schwartzman was born exactly 33 lunar phases after Robert Ursay passed away. And the
Yeah,
name Robert equals 33. And this ties into the Indianapolis Colts and a whole lot more that we'll be looking at later.
yeah. I mean, how perfect would that? I mean, that's crazy with the 33s. All right, so is that you want to pass it back to me,
Yep.
Derek, or
Yeah, you're all
okay?
good. You're all set.
All right, hold on a second. All right, guys. So as I just let Derek definitely handle the racing because I didn't do as many slides, but we will talk more about a couple different things here. But I just wanted to point out again, going back to that, what are the chances going in circles? Pacer. I forgot to even mention a pacer is literally the car that leads the race, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, that's another part of it. And then I had that here too. I had the fact that George Floyd was, but just one little slide. It's going to be George Floyd's birthday. I also could have thrown a whole wrestling decode in here. Roman Reigns' birthday, that WWE superstar, his birthday is also this day. And Halliburton seems to be connected with Roman Reigns. I'm not going to get into that here. Maybe I'll throw that in at the end if I have time. But most important thing is we had Halliburton choking himself yesterday, and now the Indianapolis 500 is going to be on this guy's birthday, of course. But this is where I want to get to like my main theme, the squared circle, because this is clearly what they're pointing to, in my opinion, because it's so much clear indication of this theme in this game and between these teams. I think it's one of the reasons why these two teams have such a rivalry because they represent the square and the circle.
Yes.
And the reason that is because Indianapolis is the circle city and New York is famous and where the Knicks play is Madison Square Garden. But in fact, Madison Square Garden is almost a complete circle. So how funny, like it's called Square Garden, but it's pretty much a circle. If you look overhead, it's as round as you can get. It's definitely not an oval. It's probably just as round as the circle in the center of Indianapolis. So yeah, that's kind of the beginning of this. And so this is where it starts with these two. So remember, I told you these are the two star players of the Knicks and the Pacers, Circle City and Square Garden, right? And they just happen to be born 3 years, 6 months, 0 days apart, which of course represents the 360 of the circle. Now, not only that, the WWE gift wrapped this riddle for us back last year on June 28, 2024. Jalen Brunson, this guy, and Tyrese Halliburton, this guy, square off at SmackDown. And let's read what it says here. NBA All-Stars Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton bring their basketball rivalry to the squared circle inside Madison Square Garden. I mean, come on now. The WWE literally gift wrapping. I mean, it even used squared circle right here. And I'm going to talk about this gematria of this phrase. But again, these two guys that squared off in the squared circle, born 360 apart. And that not just that, going to the bridge collapse thing, not only are they born 3 years, 6 months apart, they're also born exactly 3 years and 26 weeks apart, which is the date of the bridge collapse. So not only are they perfectly tied in with the circle, and don't forget, the guy that's standing next to Brunson is LA Knight. And LA Knight was in a pitch black match on 128. And remember, both the ships that have hit bridges recently supposedly blacked out before they hit the bridges. So there's the blackout connection with the bridge connection. And this guy right here was in a match called the pitch black match. So there's that too. I could tie all that in, but I'm not going to do that now. So there's the bridge collapse between these two guys. And look at this. I mean, so to my surprise, I was fumbling through these numbers and I just happened to, see that the final score of the game was 135 to 138. And 135 just happens to be the gematria of squared circle. And again, WWE, these two guys were in a match in the squared circle or back last year. Now, Madison Square Garden, as I pointed out, is the square, but it's actually a circle. And again, Indianapolis is Circle City. And the wrestling ring is known as the squared circle. So the 135 seems to be very connected to that theme there. But there's also, I'm going to show you other reasons why this number came up. Look at this. So remember how I told you guys that this guy, LA Knight, was in a match in the pitch black match with somebody? Well, he was in a pitch black match with a guy named Bray Wyatt, who just happens to equal 135, like this number. And he died on Kobe Bryant Day. And Kobe Bryant Day just happened to fall 13 weeks and 5 days after this 135 score. Of course, we know Kobe Bryant, the NBA, Kobe Bryant Day. And what does Kobe Bryant equal? Kobe Bryant equals 135, like squared circle. And now we got to bring in the bridge. What does Golden Gate Bridge equal? 135. So all of these things going back simply just to the final score of 135. And it's not a coincidence it was 13 weeks and 5 days before Kobe's birthday. And this is where it gets crazy, because guess who else's birthday is 8/24? Reggie Miller. The guy who invented the choke and who Tyrese Halliburton last night emulated him. So that means not only was this 13 weeks and 5 days before Kobe Bryant Day, it was also 13 weeks and 5 days before the birthday of the guy who started the choke, right? So, and then again, that's the final score for the Knicks is 135. Now, another thing a lot of people don't know is that yesterday was actually a very important day for the Golden Gate Bridge, which equals 135, because it was the day that it was designated a landmark on May 21st, 1999. So that yesterday was the anniversary of that. And again, Golden Gate Bridge equals 135. The final score was 135. And the last guy to touch the ball on the Knicks before the game ended was a guy named Bridges. Okay? And he's from Philadelphia. And Philadelphia moved from the basketball team in Philadelphia moved from Philadelphia to San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, whatever. So it's just crazy. I mean, this guy perfectly named to go with the bridge. You know, the place he's born is that team moved to where the bridge is located in San Francisco. The final score when he touches the ball last was literally 135, which is the gematria of the bridge. The bridge was designated on this day. And there's actually two guys in the league named Bridges, and they were selected in the same draft, only 2 picks apart. The one I just mentioned to you, Michael Bridges, who was the last one to touch the ball last night for the Knicks. And he fumbled. Another thing to mention here, he fumbled the ball out of bounds, which essentially ended the game. So he was responsible for losing the ball, which cost them the game, essentially. That's another thing to mention. So the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse connects back to Indianapolis because, remember, Indianapolis moved from Baltimore, and the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed in Baltimore. And it was actually Jim Irsay's dad. Jim Irsay died yesterday. His father, as Derek mentioned, his father moved the team from Baltimore to Indy. Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed 421 days before yesterday, which was 4 months and 21 days into the year also. And Francis, the last pope, he died on 4/21 last month, exactly a month ago. And if you take their names, Michael and Miles Bridges, like they write it here, Michael, Miles, Bridges, that they just happen to sum to 421.
Wow.
And the two popes, again, the pope means bridge builder. The Pope Leo was talking about building bridges, and he's the 267th pope. Well, the area code for Philadelphia, where Bridges is from, is 267. Again, Philadelphia moved to San Francisco. And look how old the next game Michael Bridges will be. He'll be 267 days after his birthday for their next game. against the Pacers. And look, the same night that he fumbles the ball out of bounds to lose the game, the owner of the team he's playing against, or of the city he's playing against, the football team, the Indianapolis Colts equals 267, like Michael Bridges, and like Indianapolis Colts owner, which that's who Jim Irsay is or was. And that's important because 267 is the current Pope, the current bridge builder. And yeah, I guess just to reiterate again, Michael Bridges was the last player to touch the ball, fumbling out of bounds to keep the score on 135. His last name is Bridges. Golden Gate Bridge equals 135. Not only, so I showed you guys back here how perfect it was that the game was 13 weeks and 5 days before the birthday or the Kobe Bryant Day and the birthday of Reggie Miller. But it was also the birthdays. The Golden Gate Bridge is going to turn 88 years old in a few days since its opening. And it just happens to be that this bridge this year, from its opening anniversary to the birthday of this guy, will be also 13 weeks and 5 days. And because these two star players for the Knicks are born one day apart, Brunson is born literally one day after Bridges. And so that means it could be that they're both born 13 weeks and 5 days after the Golden Gate Bridge's 88th anniversary. And they're both born in 1996 during lunation 9/11. And they both born, again, lunation started in 1923, started counting the new moons, and now they were born in 9/11 and in Virgo, and 9/11 happened in Virgo. And they both play for New York. So going back to the 326, Francis Scott Key clapped on 326. The next Super Bowl, as I mentioned in the beginning, will be in San Francisco on 326 days left in the year. And they have the bridge on the front of their logo. The other Bridges player in the NBA who wears 0, just like Halliburton, he just happened to be exactly 326 months old yesterday, guys.
That's crazy.
So, again, that's the date of the bridge collapse. And the next Super Bowl in San Francisco, the day leaving 326 days in the year. And look how old this guy was on 3/26/2024. 26 years and 6 days old. That's the Pope. 266 Pope was Francis. And that collapse was 266 days before the 266 Pope's birthday. So this guy is perfectly scripted with this. Like, how can you get any better of a script with this bridge collapse than this guy? Like,
no, I mean, it's really is perfect. These two guys drafted 2 picks apart in the same year, and this dude's age aligns perfectly. Of course, he's on the Hornets, so he's not going to be going deep into the playoffs anytime soon, but that doesn't mean his numbers won't align.
But this ties perfectly to Michael Jordan, which we could talk about because Michael Jordan is tied perfectly to Pope Francis, and Michael Jordan is still a minority owner, I believe, of the Hornets.
Oh,
and yeah. Hornets as actually a military plane. So I do have a riddle with that. You know, a riddle with military planes. They're called Hornets.
Yeah, we haven't even really touched on the Chicago connections, but there's definitely more to come.
Yeah, and these two guys, I'm almost done now, but these two guys, the two Bridges, are born 569 days apart, which is the 104th prime. And their names, if you combine them and take out their last name, which they share, it equals 104.
World Trade Center is another 104, or the World Trade Center.
Well, yeah, I didn't even think about that. But this actually ties. See, I found this 104 connection with these two guys before the game even happened yesterday. And then I just noticed a bunch of 104s coming up because look, Jim Irsay, he died in Carmel, Indiana, which equals his name. And his state, Indiana, also equals 104. And that also equals in the same cipher as the two Bridges, Michael and Miles. And think about it. Miles, like the Golden Gate Bridge, is a mile long over the water. And if you look at the or any bridge is really all about miles. It takes you miles over the water. But if you look at this guy's family, or was it the other guy's family? Yeah, Michael Bridges. His name, his wow. Dad's name is Jack. His mom's name is Rivers, of course. Bridges and Rivers. How perfect. I mean, that's just the joke of the year right there.
And yeah,
So
it's Twin
anyway,
Towers that also equals 104 reverse.
oh, Twin Towers. Pull that up. Ah, yeah. Interesting. Huh. Because I mean, yeah, I mean, I just noticed that 104 kept coming up, and I found this yesterday before this game happened. I was like, I wonder what's up with this 104, and then I typed in there both their names and an equal 104, and then the 104 just manifested perfectly last night with this. And just a couple interesting facts that Derek already touched on this, but Robert Irsay, born the father of Jim Irsay, who died yesterday, he brought the Baltimore Colts to Indy. Of course, the Baltimore Bridge collapsed, which we already talked about, but the San Francisco Bridge, the Golden Gate, opened on the 147th day of the year. Well, Jim Irsay just happens to be born 8053 days. You take out the zero, that's 853, which is the 147th prime. His dad's name, Robert Irsay, equals 147, like Freemason, like Master Builder. And this takes us perfectly back to the square and compass, the circle and the square, with the 147, President of the United States 147, U.S. President 147, 147 windows on the White House, big number. Trump is the 47th president. Washington was the first. I talked about that. So bridge collapse equals 128. These two guys died 28 years, 128 days apart, father and son. And from the finishing of the Golden Gate to the birth of the Choke Master, also the same span.
Huh.
So the same span of the two father and son duo for the Baltimore, and then this bridge was finished exactly the same amount before the Choke Master was born. And almost done. We got the three. So the square, we're talking about the square, right? Well, Jim Irsay was actually born in the suburb of Chicago. The new pope is from Chicago. And there happened to be born 37 square days apart. So there you got your squaring. Madison Square Garden that's when he died. He died when the Pacers were playing in Madison Square Garden. They're both from Chicago. Chicago equals 37. Also, Widow's son pointed out that this pope turned 36 weeks old yesterday, like 36 squared, like 36. So that's also interesting. Yep. It was also Gemini yesterday. Like, I think the squares could also be like twin symbolism, like 2 36s or 2 37s, like just twin numbers. And just to go with the Chicago theme, Jim Irsay, born in Chicago, Pope from Chicago, Obama's movie, Obama from Chicago. The only Super Bowl that Jim Irsay won with the Colts, they beat Chicago. And this is the one that I was really wanting to share. So I told you that the player who started the choke thing was Reginald Wayne Miller. He's a basketball player for Indianapolis. Well, there was also a football player for the Indianapolis Colts named Reginald Wayne. And it just so happens, so Reginald Wayne played for this guy on his team for many years, was a Hall of Fame wide receiver. He shares the same name, first two names, with the basketball player from the same city. And this guy, yesterday, on the death of his former owner, was exactly 1959 prime days old. Well, Jim Irsay was born in 1959. So that's crazy. And again, it's just so funny they had the same name, Reginald Wayne. I mean, come on. Probably a Batman theme there. And almost last slide, but 13 years. So, Derek, I know you touched on this in your thing, but Trump born exactly 13-year span before Irsay, and Reggie Miller born exactly 13 years before Kobe. So that's interesting because both these guys on the right side are dead, and both these guys are still alive. So I'm wondering what that means, because 13 is also the death card in tarot. So that's something there with that, I think. And here's the 590 I wanted to show you, Derek. The 590 is, I already told you about that, actually. But yeah, so the skull and bones is kind of what I want to talk about next anyway. So here we go.
Nice.
Or we can talk whatever you want to talk about, but that's kind of where I would lead into.
Well, yeah. Skull and Bones is a perfect lead into what we're going to look at. And this ties into the overarching Chicago theme that we've been looking at. So obviously we have the big connections with Pope Francis and Michael Jordan. Well, after Francis died, there was a famous Chicago athlete who passed away, Steve Mongo McMichael from the Bears, and he was also a pro wrestler in the squared circle. Kind of had a double career. And, this represents Chicago. And then we get the new pope from Chicago. Well, Steve McMichael was born on the date October 17th. And just a couple days ago, we got news of the death of actor George Wendt, who was born in Chicago, Illinois. And he was also born on October 17th. And these two guys were born 108 months apart exactly. And remember the Cubs winning the World Series after 108 years, the 108-story tall Willis Tower in Chicago. And the new pope, who was born in Chicago, was born on the date leaving 108 days in the year. It's connected to the 666 as well. Very important. Now, George Wendt was best known for being on the show Cheers. And Cheers takes place in the city of Boston, right? Well, yesterday, we got news that a U.S. congressman passed away, a guy named Jerry Connolly. And where was Jerry Connolly born? Boston, Massachusetts. So we're seeing this big Chicago-Boston connection with many of these news stories. And this congressman just died of cancer. And a few days earlier, we learned that Joe Biden has an aggressive cancer diagnosis. So this leads into the skull and bones part, right? Chicago, the East Coast. Well, Chicago is on the 41st meridian. I'm sorry, the 41st northern parallel, which is also the same parallel that the Vatican is located on. And in Super Bowl 41, Jim Irsay beat his hometown team, the Chicago Bears. Well, in gematria, 41 is the sum of skull and bones in Pythagorean, or reduction gematria. And of course, who was the president during the 9/11 attacks in New York City? It was the 41st president, the son of the 41st president, George W. Bush. And both of the Bush family members were members of Skull and Bones, attended Yale University. So what this points us to is a significant Skull and Bones riddle tied into the death of Jim Irsay. Now, one of the two founders of the Skull and Bones Society, along with William Huntington Russell, is a man named Alphonso Taft, who was related to future President William Howard Taft. And look carefully at the date Alphonso Taft passed away, May 21st, which is the same day Jim Irsay died. So same date as the death of a Skull and Bones founder. And check this out. They died exactly 1,608 months apart from one another. 168, the three main digits. Well, the Pacers last night were playing in New York City against the New York Knicks, both with values of 168. This weekend in Indianapolis, they'll be running the Indy 500, which also equals 168 in ordinal. And Cody, I thought it was also interesting that Indy 500 sums to 333 in capital letters. And 333 is an important number to Indianapolis, which has the triple three in the Latin cipher. And look at how old Robert Irsay would have been when his son Jim died. 37,333 days or 5,333 weeks. In fact, Jim Irsay was born 2,333 days or 333 weeks after the Colts were founded. So a lot of threes. And of course, the Pacers hit several threes in a row last night. I heard them talking about the number 33 over and over, but
Reggie Miller is famous for his threes, so that's probably and also the
Well,
chokester.
sure, and the last name Miller also has that 33 as well
Oh, nice.
to go along with Robert. So, call me crazy, but Tyrese Halliburton's gesture on the court last night, I think, goes two ways, right? You have the choking symbolism, but I also believe that this is connected to the Skull and Bones Code. And
Definitely.
I actually did a post recently about the uh, the Chicago White Sox and Pope Leo, and how the Field of Dreams game from Major League Baseball was a skull and bones riddle. And that Field of Dreams game ended in a walk-off, and the player made this gesture, which is obviously it's not a choking gesture, but this is another like skull and bones type riddle, right? So Halliburton does this. And by the way, this will be the 109th edition of the Indy 500, which is a lot like the founding date of Yale University, 10-9. But anyway, check out how old Tyrese Halliburton was last night when he made this gesture and when Jim Irsay died. 302 months and 20 days old. So right there we have the 322, but there's another 322 because pole sitter Robert Schwartzman was born 32 months and 2 days after the death of Robert Irsay. And with Fibonacci numbers, Robert Irsay yields a 322. Now, a lot of the work on my channel is about this special skull and bones eclipse code. And it's important to understand that, the shape of these eclipses is very similar to the skull and crossbones, and I don't think it's a mistake. Eclipses from the same Saros series are separated by 223 lunar phases. This is the Hebrew value of the moon. And these are the same digits on Skull and Bones' emblem, 322. And Yale's 322nd anniversary in 2023 was synced up extremely well with these eclipses. 82 lunar phases apart. Yale's anniversary was 82 sidereal months after the first eclipse. And this goes deeper as well. For instance, I just want to look at the number 192. So Yale's Skull and Bones was founded in 1832, meaning the society was 192 years old for the second eclipse, which completed the crossbones. The number 192 sums to 322, but check this out. Yale's Skull and Bones with the ampersand, Secret Society, all 192. And this was the second eclipse. Both of those words equal 192. And of course, the second eclipse happened to pass directly over the city of Indianapolis, which is near where I saw the eclipse last year. And check out Tyrese Halliburton's age on the date of that eclipse over Indianapolis, where he plays basketball. He was 8,805 days old on that date. Skull and crossbones equals 885. And now he's up there on the basketball court making this gesture, which, again, somewhat similar to a skull and bone symbolism. Now, yesterday was exactly 134 years after the death of the Skull and Bones founder, and 134, a number connected to the eclipse code. Solar eclipse Vesica Piscis, both 134.
So wait, technically it was the beginning, it was the start of the 135th year. So
yeah, I didn't think of that, but you're right. This technically, a span of 135 years tying into everything you were pointing out. So we looked at a lot of these, but there's a really big sync with the number 393. Now, for several years, I've been teaching about the number 1331 and how this number represents a solar eclipse. And I made this post back in 2022. To me, it's completely undeniable. And one of the numbers in Latin or Jewish gematria that sums to 1331 is 393. And the numbers 39 and 93 are very connected to 1331 in mathematics. So look at this. Indiana Pacers, 393. The two Roberts that we've been discussing, born 3,993 weeks apart. Last year, exactly 1 week before the eclipse over Indianapolis, a former Indianapolis Colts player died in a motorcycle crash, which equals 1393. That player, Vontae Davis, was 13,093 days old. And again, eclipse sums to 33, and Vontae Davis died exactly 1 week before the eclipse, which is another 33, like 7 days, 33. And Cody, it's the 33rd verse of the Bible where God rests on the seventh day. So also in gematria, the city Indianapolis equals 393 in standard. Colts, 393 standard. The Indianapolis Colts, 393 with capital letters. And the Colts play their home games at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is another 393. Jim Irsay dies 13 months and 13 days after the last Skull and Bones eclipse. And remember, the Pope was elected exactly 13 months after that eclipse.
So, Derek, I believe that Jim Irsay's birthday this year is actually the only Friday the 13th of the year, which is actually Jason Voorhees' birthday.
Oh, sick.
So I actually left that whole code out, but I guarantee I could probably make, I don't know, maybe I'll make a whole video about Jim Irsay being his birthday being Friday the 13th. So that I know that Dr. Savage has been talking about that day. So, and remember I believe that this lines up perfectly with the Pi Day blood moon being,
yes,
I think it's 13 weeks after. Or I can't remember what it is, but I'd have to look at it again, but it's definitely synced up. Dr. Savage has been talking about it a lot.
Yeah, we're not quite to 13 weeks, but there was a big 69, and I can touch on this also.
I meant to the Friday the 13th measurement. What is that from the blood moon to the June 13th?
That is 13 weeks. Good job.
Yeah, so that's what it was. It was okay. So this isn't the Pi blood moon, right? I talked about the circle, this whole decode. The Pi blood moon is exactly in the middle of two Friday the 13th by 13 weeks. And Jim Irsay's birthday just happens to be the birthday of Jason Voorhees from that movie.
Yeah, look at that.
So definitely interesting to see how that plays out, considering he just passed.
Another thing I wanted to share, because this connects to the story of the U.S. congressman who died as well. The two Irsays passed away exactly 379 sidereal months apart. This is a lunar orbit. And the name Halliburton equals 379. But this is the 75th prime number. And Halliburton also equals 750. Like the Indiana Pacers, the team he plays for. Irsay's death was 75 weeks after he overdosed in 2023. And this is a huge number to Indianapolis, which is 75, like Indianapolis Colts. Colts, Robert Irsay, Bob Irsay, and Indy 500, all with 75 connections. And this year, The Indianapolis 500 is held on a date with 75 numerology. The fact that this is 525 and 75, well, I don't want to get too sidetracked. Because this goes into Monaco as well. But I wanted to talk about this 379 real quick, just to show how these stories are all tied together, everything on the same day. The Virginia congressman, Jerry Connolly, he died at the age of 75. And check out his name, Jerry Connolly, 75, like U.S. congressman. He represented the 11th district, which is another 750. And he died of esophageal cancer, which equals 379, the 75th prime number. The district that he represented nearly borders Washington, D.C. And again, Joe Biden diagnosed with cancer like 3 or 4 days before this story. That would, he was working in Washington, D.C. But also yesterday, May 21st, Donald Trump hosted the president of South Africa. And I could go on and on about this as well, but what I want to focus on is this 75 connection, because this year's Formula One season is being called F175. It's the 75th anniversary season. And yesterday's meeting with the president was exactly 379 weeks after he took office, right? And this weekend's race for Formula One is in Monte Carlo in Monaco, which is another 379. So it's just weird that, this is a number I pointed out in all 3 posts I made yesterday, just showing how all of this is kind of scripted together. And
yeah, I mean, that 75 was, I didn't put any 75s in my decode, but I kept seeing it as well. So, I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it with all these stories, how it connects just to that one number.
And for me, honestly, the big riddle with this, now, again, I talked about this riddle in March earlier this year.
We got 75 likes right now. It's funny.
How many?
75.
Oh, perfect.
How about that?
So I thought Oscar Piastri had numerology to win the Australian Grand Prix, which was the first race of the year. However, the riddle was so big, it may have actually been pointing to his championship instead, because he didn't win that race. And now Piastri has kind of broken out as the leading driver in the championship. So the name Oscar Piastri always reminded me of the name Oscar Pistorius, right? Would you agree with me a little bit?
Yeah.
So this being the F175, Piastri was born exactly 750 weeks after Oscar Pistorius. And Pistorius' girlfriend that he murdered was born during Lunation's 750. But not only is this weekend fall on a date with 75 numerology, but it's also May 25th or 525. And 750 weeks is 5,250 days. So doesn't it look like this points to Piastri this weekend? I mean,
yeah,
I actually do put my money where my mouth is. So that's where I'm going. I don't encourage people to bet. And I've been bad this year, but I haven't been bad, but I haven't been as good. And this just stood out right away. Like, this is a huge alignment to me. And just a reminder, Oscar Pistorius from South Africa, which is also where we had the president. Oscar Pistorius would have been 14,060 days old yesterday. That matches his name, Pistorius, 146, like Oval Office. Donald Trump, born on 14/6. The meeting was 185 days before Pistorius' birthday and 185 days after the president's birthday, matching Donald John Trump and White House. So I don't think it could be more clear. I mean, look at the name of the South African president's name. His full name equals 225 and 1521. And he goes to the White House on 5/21 of 2025. The same digits in his name.
Mm-hmm.
These are also the same digits in the age of Riva Steenkamp. for the meeting, 15251, a palindromic number, which also circles back to Oscar Piastri. And Riva Steenkamp's name equals 1132. We just had the 1132nd F1 Grand Prix in history. She was born 11,232 days after the president of her home nation. I mean, come on. This is clearly connected.
Yeah.
And this just goes on and on. I have a whole post on it. Oscar Piastri is connected to all of these characters by the numbers. And there's a nice and tidy skull and bones code in here as well. Because, what was it? Yeah, this meeting was exactly 640 weeks after Steenkamp was murdered. And Skull and Bones and Secret Society connect to the number 64 through gematria and their address. That is also Oscar Piastri's birthday, 6/4. And I might as well touch on this. You know, why is South Africa so important to Donald Trump, right? He's got this leader of Doge, his right-hand man, Elon Musk, who is originally from South Africa. And his middle name, Reeve, kind of reminds me of Riva Steenkamp, the South African model. And how funny is it that the largest river, you know, we're talking about Reeve and Riva, kind of like river. Well, the largest river in South Africa is the Orange River. And these South Africans all connected to the Orange Man, Donald Trump. Trump was born 300 months and 14 days before Elon Musk. Well, that's a pi riddle. 314. Remember, we had the lunar eclipse on 314. Well, this meeting with the South African president was 69 days after the lunar eclipse. Lunar and eclipse, both 69. Pi, circles, 69. The president's name, Cyril Ramaphosa, 69. Elon Reeve Musk, 69, like Orange River. And when Riva Steenkamp was killed by Oscar Pistorius, Cyril Ramaphosa was 60 years and 90 days old. And don't forget, Elon Musk sums to 445, which is the Hebrew value for total lunar eclipse. And this is all synced to the total lunar eclipse on Pi Day. The name Elon Musk even matches pi. So this is so obvious what they're doing. It reminded me of that meeting with Zelensky where they, you know, argued with Volodymyr for the cameras and staged it up. They did the same thing yesterday. And whenever you see a contentious meeting in the Oval Office, especially with Donald Trump, you can rest assured that there is a fun occultic numeric riddle lying right underneath it.
We've already had a few of those since he started back up, so I guess it's going to be a theme.
Yeah, I don't see anything different for the next 4 years. Elon Musk also had the 666 lunar phases yesterday. How cool is that? Pi day eclipse equals 666, like mathematics of the circle. Yeah, someone threw this out in the chat earlier, and shout out to them. I think they mean, like, is it 135 all-time playoff wins?
Yeah, it says enter the NBA Finals with 135 wins all-time in playoffs.
Very nice.
And there's also a riddle here for the Pacers because so when the Pacers tied the game yesterday to go to overtime, the score was 125 to 123. And funny enough, if the New York Knicks were to win tomorrow, the actual record between the two teams would be the same as the score was before the Pacers tied it. So it'd be the Knicks would be 125 and the Pacers would be 123. So it will be interesting. I did mention this to Ball Don't Lie too, because I know he's all over the basketball. It would be interesting if the Knicks win the next game and then the Pacers win the next two to tie the series at 125 apiece. Like the first game was tied at 125 apiece. So there is that riddle.
Yeah. That's very similar to what I noticed yesterday. I actually heard this numerology on the local radio station, Sports Talk Radio. Yesterday, the Packers attempted to ban the tush push by the Eagles. We were talking about Philadelphia earlier. And look at the vote. The vote was 22-10. They needed 24 votes. They only got 22. And that's the same score the Packers lost to the Eagles by in the playoffs.
Wow. Crazy.
So not exactly related, but kind of similar, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just crazy.
So I also with the 135s, and I don't know if you were done yet or not, Derek, but I guess I should talk more about the 135s because that was my big number, and I think that well, just to add to what you were saying, with well, here's the 75s real fast. I don't know if you had, I don't think you had all these, but I know you had some of them. But Reggie Miller 75. If you abbreviate Carmel, Indiana 75. Ursay was the owner, which equals 75 of the Indianapolis Colts, which equals 75. His dad's name was 75. They were in Madison Square Garden last night. Madison 75. Order out of chaos, of course. And the ship that hit the bridge a few days ago was a Mexican Navy ship, which equals 75. It left from Acapulco, Mexico, which equals 75. And I tied that to World War III, which equals 75. So
Wow.
a lot of 75s, and that's just addition to already all the 75s you shared. So just crazy amount of 75s. Now, another one number I wanted to touch on in connection to what you mentioned New York City's 168. But what's funny is if you just add the in front of the Golden Gate Bridge or the squared circle, it also comes to that number.
Yeah, that's big then.
And again, look what happens if you combine the two names. If you combine Miles and Michael Bridges, the two bridges, and just use their last name once, it's also 168.
Yeah, I don't usually like combining names here, but I think you showed in this decode that it's absolutely relevant.
Well, this one just seemed like the one to do it with because they have the same names. They even have the same like initials. Like
like MI.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think the miles is all connected to bridges, which takes you a distance of miles over a body of water. So, yeah, I mean, and their names together also equals the 111, which that's interesting. New York. And what was the other one I want to talk about?
Yeah, the 78 is also New York too, so there's a double match.
Yeah. Oh, the 135. So to go back with your Alfonso Taff, he, of course, you mentioned he died on May 21st, just like yesterday when Ursay died. And we found out that it was a 135-year span from Taft's death to yesterday. So he started his 135th year since he's been dead yesterday. And well, lo and behold, he died on 135 date numerology.
Nice. Wow.
So, and look how old the Golden Gate, or look how old his death was on the Golden Gate being, because it was also the same day, on the Golden Gate being designated, was 108 years. So, which actually, it was 1080. If you read that number like that, 1080, well, I believe Golden Gate, is it Golden Gate Bridge or Golden Gate equals 1080?
It's Golden Gate Bridge, I think, or Golden Gate,
Yeah, it's Golden Gate. Golden Gate equals 1080. So the Golden Gate was designated 1080 after Alfonso Taft died, and the 1296 isn't big because that's 36 square, and that's how the Pope yesterday was 36 weeks old.
Wow. That's really good too. It's this shit just goes so deep, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, the bridge thing just, like I could have even talked more about the squared circle thing because, just to retouch on that, like the wrestling theme, I could have put all. I know sometimes I fall back on my wrestling decodes because I just enjoy them too much, so I kind of tried to leave more wrestling out of this one. But I mean, these two guys were literally at a wrestling match in the squared circle, and yeah, I mean the whole thing with
for you to decode it.
Yeah, I mean, with Kobe Bryant being connected to Bray, or Kobe Bryant being connected to Bray Wyatt also. I mean, there's that with the 135. And, just to also touch on, I think there was another, because on Wikipedia it lists it as squaring of the circle. Of course, the wrestling ring is called a squared circle, which I decoded numerically with the 135. But if you use this phrase, squaring the circle, it has the 90, which Golden Gate equals 90. But I mean, I didn't find as much there. But the reality was that I just thought that this whole thing was connected to that theme. And what's funny is they found out, according to this, that you can't actually square a circle the way. So it's kind of like an impossible thing. But what's funny about that is they actually kind of did square the circle with Madison Square Garden. It's a circle, but it's called a square.
Well, I used to pound circle pegs into square holes as a kid, so it can be done.
Square, yeah, that's the good one. That I think it actually says that here. It says not to be confused with square peg and round hole. Look at that.
Well, there you go.
Let's see what that equals. I just want to look at that.
If it equals my name, I'm going to laugh. I don't think it does, but.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Matches Skull and Bones Society as well. That's funny.
Wow. Interesting. 322. And then 322 doesn't come up all the time. It's not a number that's so easy to get, I find. So that's
I mean, this to me, it's all connected to the mathematics of the circle, which is a phrase that has gematria of 3022. Circle is 223 and 322.
Yeah.
And then you had the 90 and 99, which is also mathematics of the circle, upside down 666. So it's pretty solid.
Yeah. And just to go back to the Roman Reigns thing real fast, to connect the wrestling. Remember, Roman Reigns lost his championship in Philadelphia. His birthday is the day of the Indianapolis 500. And when Halliburton yesterday did the miraculous thing, he was when he was born, 2000. And I mentioned this to you, Derek, but I wanted to add this in the decode. He was born on a leap day. So Halliburton, let's see. He was he was just past his, look at that. He was exactly 41 Venusian years yesterday, too. I didn't even see that. And he was exactly 312 lunar phases. So 41 Venusian years to go with Skull and Bones, and 312 lunar to go with Donald Trump got 312 votes, Pope Francis, all connected with the 312.
Yeah, I had a bunch of 312 with George Went from Chicago as well.
Yeah, that's a Chicago area code. Yeah, right. So
yeah, and I think George Went died at exactly 312 mercurial years. Let me find this. Geez, I've done so many posts recently. I'm trying to figure out which decode it was. Oh, it was Connolly, the congressman.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was exactly 312 mercurial years old when he died of cancer, and his name, Gerald Connolly, is 312 with capital letters. That name is also 68 reduction, and he died exactly 68 mercurial years after he was elected or sworn in.
I must have typed it wrong. I didn't remember how to spell that guy's name, but.
Well, do you remember in the NBA in 2019, Kawhi Leonard made a game-winning shot in Game 7 where the ball bounced off the rim 3 or 4 times before going in?
Oh, yeah, I think I remember that, yeah.
That kind of reminded me of what happened last night with Halliburton hitting a brick that went like 10 feet up and then right through the hoop. And
yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, what a perfect time for it to do that. To do that too at the most suspenseful, most important time in the game. It just happens to do that.
Yeah, like you almost never see it. But anyways, those two shots were 6 years and 9 days apart, or 314 weeks apart. And I just covered those numbers connection to pi earlier.
Yeah, that's crazy. And like going back to the circle and the square, and the basketball is all about a circle ball going through a circle net, and circles and written on the, and even when he shot the shot, he was stepping on the line, which also probably is coded, being on the line of the circle, or the half circle, I guess.
Yeah, the
Right there.
3-point line to me was like the path of totality, and his toe was right in the middle of it, kind of like Indianapolis in the middle of the path. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, also real quick with what I was going to say, the 13-16 Halliburton yesterday on his game winning, or on his heroics, he was 13-16 weeks in one day. Well, when Roman Reigns lost his title, Jarek, you know this, but he was 13-16 days into his reign.
Yep.
And when Roman Reigns won the title, it was actually on the birthday of Bridges. So, and then again, the reason I'm talking about that, again, for people who are confused, is because the Indianapolis 500 in a few days on George Floyd's death anniversary is on Roman Reigns' 41st birthday. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I think that's his 41st birthday.
Well, it's his 40th birthday, which connects to the Indy 500, which has 4 turns.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, I guess I'm a year ahead.
No, because he was born a week before me.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
He's 39. 40 in a little bit, so.
But yeah, I mean, and right now is the time of the heliacal set. Again, it says right here, Reigns' reign was 13-16 days. Today is, or this time of period we're in right now, is the heliacal setting of Sirius. I've already showed how Roman Reigns is completely a Sirius and twin symbol. He's very much a twin symbol. Also, he has 2 sets of twins. He's a Gemini, and he has twin cousins that he wrestles with. And let's not forget, the guy who won the Royal Rumble at Indy this year was a guy from San Francisco, Jey Uso, who's a twin.
Oh, very good.
So this goes back to the Royal Rumble, which was in Indy, and Jey Uso from San Francisco, which connects once again to Indy to San Francisco. At first, I thought I was crazy for connecting San Francisco to all this, but then I realized pretty fast that, yeah, the next Super Bowl's in San Francisco, and the guy won the Royal Rumble in Indy from San Francisco, beating John Cena from Boston, he's from Massachusetts. There's one more thing I wanted to say too. Oh, this center square, something to look into. I mean, if somebody wants to do some extra homework, this central, and this might connect to the war theme I've been seeing. This circle in Indianapolis is actually called Soldiers, Indiana State Soldiers and Sailors Monument. So we just had the sailors run into the bridge. And so now Indianapolis comes in and beats New York, which just had the sailors run into their bridge. And so I think that's interesting. What else? And just the Reggie Miller thing, he was known as the Nick Killer, and now Halliburton is kind of taking over his theme, I guess. I guess we'll see if it continues. And he's also born in Riverside. Look at how many assists he had in his career. 4-1-4-1. That's interesting. But yeah, there was so much I could have added. I'm sure, Derek, you always leave out a bunch too. There's so much I could have added, but
yeah, it's a discipline in its own right to know when to stop, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing is like with the bridge stuff, I was already looking into that. And then yesterday it all just kind of fell into place but the 135, I think for me was a really big part of this. And I don't think it's a coincidence that was the final score, with Bridges muffing the ball out of bounds to end the score at that. And I think with the Golden Gate Bridge anniversary coming up. Oh, and another news story I think is worth covering, considering I've talked about this in the last weeks. I've talked about June 11th. I've talked about Kim Jong-un and Mars. Well, yesterday we had a bizarre story in the news. Same day all this was going down, Kim Jong-un warship. So this might be playing out exactly like I was seeing it with him having his Mercury or his Mars anniversary since he took over on June 11th, and Trump turning 42 Martian years on that day, which is war. And now we have a warship serious accident. And just come on, serious accident, Sirius, the dog star with the star right behind him. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has condemned a serious accident during the launch of a new warship. And we've had all this ship stuff going on. We've had the ships hitting bridges. And now on the same day that this whole thing goes down, in between New York and Indy, you have this story about some sort of serious accident. So I don't know. It just seems interesting. I was talking about that same theme with him. June 11th is a very special day for this, for Trump and Kim Jong-un. Warship launch. See anything there, Derek?
Well, let me navigate back to the right screen first. Warship launch. Check mine out here.
I mean, talking about Sirius, I see the 95 like Sirius. And again, they said it was a serious accident, and Sirius, the dog star.
Yeah, and also there's a 612 in Fibonacci. That was the meeting date of Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Oh, that's a wait of which warship or
warship launch in Fibonacci.
Interesting.
Might be relevant. I don't know. I didn't even see this story yet.
But I mean, for me, it stood out because I've already been looking at this guy, and it's not every day we get like really news about him, to be honest. So that's why it stands out to me, because it just seems like a bizarre story, Warship launch for 612. That's a good one.
It's hard to believe anything that comes out of North Korea.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just like a perpetual Broadway play, as far as I can tell. Not to say that people aren't suffering over there; they are. But as far as what the government's doing, it's very Masonic.
Well, and actually, I think this actually ties in, because I was talking all about this decode about yesterday and the square and the circle. Well,
yeah.
That immediately
it ties into the Pope too. The new Pope has matching gematria with Freemasonry, both his Pope name and his real name. So it's definitely a big theme going on this year. I mean, they're still 307 years old, which is a huge Masonry number until next month.
But I think an interesting theme to think about here with this Korea news is, remember, there's this show that has the square and the circle and the triangle. And in fact, I could probably say all these things were tied in last night. Of course, you had Madison Square Garden against Circle City. And what is the Knicks logo? Well, it's a triangle. So, and yeah. Squid Game, the reason I'm bringing Squid Game into this is because Squid Game is a Korean show. And I just brought up this Korean story, or North Korean story, so still Korea. And that's why I think this could be tied in with this. And the new season, wait, is the new season? I think there's another season coming out. Hold on.
Season 2 came out on the 26th of December, I believe.
Yeah.
Or season 3 also. Wow. When is that coming out?
Oh, look at that. June 27th.
Really? Okay.
So literally one day before the anniversary of Halliburton and Brunson meeting in Madison Square Garden. And you know what? What else happened on June 28th last year? Didn't Biden lose to Trump didn't he get embarrassed, and didn't Biden choke in the debate last year on that same day? Was that the same day?
Yeah, it was the end of June. Let me see. I did a post on it. I made a post called "Corpse of Joe Biden Participates in Presidential Debate" from June 27th.
Okay, it was June 27th. So it was one day before Halliburton and Brunson, the two players from last night, met. So
Yeah,
that
now we
seems,
got confirmation that Biden's been sick.
yeah. But yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of wind it down. If is there anything else you specifically want to share, Derek? Or
No, I think I got it all out of my system. I think we covered everything in a reasonable time today.
yeah, it was a lot. I normally don't have 37 slides. Let me go into the chat and see if there's any comments that I'd like to pull up. Yeah, it's Elon Musk's birthday too, June 28th. That's right. Square, circle, triangle, stop, play, record. Yeah. Beast out of the sea, squid. Yeah. I was going to do it before this whole story broke yesterday. I was going to do a decode titled today. I was planning on doing something titled "It Came from Beneath the Sea." And, well, I don't know. I don't have enough on it right now to show anything, but I do think there's a beast out of the sea thing here with all the ships coming from the sea and hitting bridges. And I shared with you, Derek, but the new Pope was born on the Mexico release. And, I told you this before the Mexico ship hit the bridge. I sent you a message in Discord and I said, it's crazy because that movie, the Mexico release of the movie, It Came from Beneath the Sea, was released on the exact day of his birth, Pope Leo.
Right. I think you caught on to a very clear sign there.
And then, that that Mexico thing happened the next day. Like I was like, okay, well, the Mexico ship. And the reason I think this is also relevant is because Mexico is the southern border, the south as in coming up out of, right? That's kind of what that's what I think the theme was with the Chicago thing. I haven't really said it yet, but in Chicago, it's all about the north and the south. Well, the guy from the south, is it the south? No. Yeah, the South Siders, the Chicago White Sox. He's a Chicago White Sox fan, and he won, and he got the Pope, and he's rising out of the sea, like the Holy See, right?
This kind of reminds me of the movie Life of Pi, where they have a shipwreck off of the coast of Mexico. And Life of Pi was a book written and published on the same day as the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
So
That's a good
just
point,
drawing
too.
more links in case we needed any more.
Yeah. I mean, that's I didn't even think about. I actually didn't know it was centered in Mexico. So
yeah, that's where the ship wrecks, and then it's 227 days later he gets rescued. And it actually kind of follows like the path of the eclipse from last year in April, which started in Mexico, had its point of greatest eclipse in Mexico, and then passed into the United States through Texas up into Maine.
Right. And this is kind of why I think the theme is this, because all of the refugees, all the people that could possibly do terrorist things in the United States entered from out of the sea or out of the south, out of across the Mexican border. So think of a flood of refugees, right? Beast out of the sea, coming out of Mexico, coming up through the border into the United States. And that's why the Southsiders is probably relevant with the new Pope being from a fan of the Southsiders. That's just extra stuff. It's not important, but thanks to everyone for listening. And is there something else you have there, Derek? I saw you had something up.
No, I'm just typing away, peeking at numbers.
I see.
That's all.
All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on as usual, and I really appreciate you. And as always, thanks for everything you do, and thanks to everyone in the chat for listening to us. Hopefully, we presented this in a way that was clear and concise, and not too not too
convoluted, I think. Yeah.
convoluted or confusing, whatever. But yeah, and if you guys would hit the like button on the way out, and we will see you guys very soon in another video, right, Derek?
Yep. Peace, love, and God bless. And we'll talk to you all soon.
God bless everyone.
See ya.